I don't know why. It's like the film just flowed along. It was so obvious. The purpose of every scene was obvious. And I just love Asa Butterfield's performance, and the young Asa was terrific, maybe even better. And it's like the third, fourth time I've seen it, and over the years. This came out in 2014, and it was introduced to me at the South Bay Film Society, which is a great group that meets in Torrance, in a theater now, usually. And they rent 3 theaters if the subscribers want. And so they have often 500 people at a screening in 3 different theaters. And then I've gone down there and moderated discussions afterwards, but only for 45 minutes. I haven't done that since the pandemic, but they've just now started to come back. And the director of that Film Society is Randy Burler, who had been the city planner of Manhattan Beach for 30 years and retired, and said, well, I love movies, let's start a film society. And Randy's Jewish and a mensch, and has done his best to program for his audiences, which is about half Jewish, but he does screen a lot of Israeli films, but mostly films of substance. And that's why I think one year I did 9 of his 42 films. He does them once a week on Wednesday nights usually. And he did 42 films that year, pre-pandemic. And it was great. Another, skewing older audience that grew up with movies as the top cultural experience and stayed with it. And it's very much like our demographic here. And I learned a lot of what I do here, there, as well as from Stanley Davids, I have to credit. And that audience, in 2015, when we screened it, loved it. And I hope you all did too. I think the reason many of us love it, I should tell you a little bit about the history of the film. So this was the first feature of Matthew Morgan. He had been a documentary filmmaker before, and he made a film about the International Math Olympics earlier. And he was so taken by the students he met there that he got together with a partner and they wrote the story and the screenplay, and he got it funded by the BBC. And I think he did a great job, especially for a first-time director. We can talk about that if you want. Does anybody want to chime in with first shot? Let me ask you this. So when I saw it again, I hadn't seen it in years, 5 years. I cried before the main titles after the car crash. And I had to ask myself, why? Why? And I realized that it had all these winning things. The parents were great. It seemed all natural. And then the car crash comes out of nowhere. It's really one of the best car crashes. I don't know how they did it. And they even rolled that car in a separate take, of course. But, and I don't know how much CGI there was and visual effects that went into it. But it was just the right touch, the right amount of threat, terror, surprise, sadness, and resolution. Did anybody else feel that? Were you like seriously moved? And then, of course, okay, I have an answer to my own question, but I'd rather hear yours. Fern?
So, and then Risa and Steve Greenberg. Who else wants to speak?
Doris?
Melanie?
Oh my God, well, leave your hands
Hold
up.
on. Who else?
Donna?
Did you say Doris?
Yes, Doris waved.
Okay, I got it. And Kurt. Okay, I just wanted to say that the suddenness of the accident just struck me as how things do happen in life. Unlike in a movie where you may have some clues are waiting to happen, there's what I think of as before and after. All of things happen, and all of a sudden, everything is different forever.
For everyone involved, yeah.
Yes, and I was just very struck by how it captured that instantly, and that was my own feeling. So in the following order, let's do Risa, Steve Greenberg, Melanie, Doris, and Kurt. And then we'll take any other people who want to comment. Let's start with Risa.
I agree that the initial showing of that was superb, and it grabs you. There's no question about it. but I got really tired of seeing it so frequently through the movie. I thought it was not necessary to show it to me again and again and again. It was very important to see when he was taking the exam, and the fact that the question was a train question, and we know that the train was a very important thing between him
Right.
and his father. But so it was very important there. But other times during the movie, it was, I thought, unnecessary. It's like I knew it, I seen it, I understood it, and I didn't appreciate being constantly shown. I also felt that this movie, although it was excellent, it was a very good movie. But the problem was that I'd seen that story before. I saw it in what was it, the Brilliant something that had the schizophrenia, Beautiful Mind. It's the same story, and there's another story. Oh, the original one that was done, the Rainmaker,
Rain Man with Tom Cruise.
The Rain Man. So I was feeling a little bit like I've been there, I've seen that. And then also I thought the ending was inappropriate. Not inappropriate, that's the wrong word. It was inconsistent with the
Okay, let's save the ending.
That's where I am.
We'll save the ending for last.
I just want to say that, to say we've already heard the story is kind of like saying I've seen 3 Holocaust stories and I don't want to see anymore. To me, it was just a different take, and I liked it quite a bit. Steve Greenberg.
Yeah, like Jim, I agree with what you just said also about this it's a variation on a theme maybe, but it's significantly different, mostly because of the age of the protagonist. A Beautiful Mind and Rain Man were not about kids that young. But like Jim, I've done a fair amount of editing. I was just staggered by this opening crash. And I went back and viewed it like 3 or 4 times. The only thing I can figure is the actor playing his father must have been a stuntman, because I don't know how it didn't look like CGI to me. I don't know how they could have done that so effectively. And it really did come out of nowhere. And I felt like this was an echo throughout the whole film. It was really necessary to see again, particularly Sadie Hawkins' reaction to it in one of the versions. Sally Hawkins, Sadie Hawkins, yeah, that's somebody else. Sally Hawkins' reaction was featured differently later on, and I thought that was like another, again, a variation on this. It wasn't exactly the same thing over and over, which still would have been okay with me.
Okay, Melanie, unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. All right, so one of the thoughts about the car crash was it took me a while to realize that was her husband and not her son, an older son. As far as the romantic relationship with the mom and the tutor, I didn't quite get that.
We're not going there yet.
Okay, all right.
Let's not go there.
But as far as the film itself, I really liked it. I'm a special ed instructional aide for 10 years now in Beverly Hills, and I work with all ages. I work with middle schoolers for about 4 years, and now I work with elementary. And I could just see so many similarities with kids that are bullied because they're a little bit different. A positive note, the girls in my school are so nice to these boys that really are, very smart, but nerdy, and the girls are so nice to them, and I could see that in this movie. The math part of it I really like, because I see my students, when they figure something out in math, it's just amazing. Everything kind of clicks, more so than any other subject. I really liked the movie. I didn't see all the realism in all of it, but as far as, the actor and the concept of the movie, I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really good movie.
So, but by implication, Melanie, are you saying that the boys in your school don't treat the intellectually challenged students as well as the girls?
Girls are more complimentary. Maybe the girls are a little more mature. Case in point, I'm working in a kindergarten class in the morning with a little boy, and he's having a struggle. It's very hard for him, behaviorally especially. And little kindergartners will say to him, "You're amazing. You're just outstanding." And in the middle school, I saw the same thing. I had a student who was brilliant, but he blurted out the most terrible things. But girls responded to these boys in a really nice empathy. That's the word. They have a lot of empathy. And I saw that in this movie, that both girls seemed to like him, But I really liked the movie, and I could see the realism in it, which helps me when I see a movie to be able to connect with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did like the movie.
Doris, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I like the movie a lot. I love the relationship between the father and the son to begin with. And when that crash happened, it just, oh my God, it was like, what? Unbelievable. It was like a thunder. And miraculously, the boy survived, of course. But I found myself very teary-eyed throughout the film. I found it really a lot of sadness there. And I felt sad for him that I wanted to shake him and say, hey, come on, reach out. People are reaching out to you. They want to touch you. They want to talk to you and befriend you. And he just didn't have it. And,
before the accident, the father was saying something to him that we probably all wish we'd said to our own kids, more than once. He was saying, we love you anyway. And, how you are doesn't affect how we love each other.
Exactly.
A really lovely sentiment. And then bang, he doesn't realize the lights changed and goes through the intersection.
Maybe it's being the mother of sons that I felt such empathy for that kid. But
boys need, for those of you who don't have sons, they need a little extra coaxing to open up emotionally.
I thought the film was
They come around, though. They come around.
Yeah, it was well done. And I like the mother. I thought she was
she's great. Now, she was Maudie. We saw Maudie a couple years ago about the arthritic artist in Canada who winds up living with Ethan Hawke, who's a curmudgeon-y old guy on the spectrum, and they actually fall in love. Do you remember that film, Maudie?
No.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of you were there. Whoever was there loved it. It was a pretty astonishing film. I think Brad and Karen may have seen it.
She was a loving and caring mother, and went along with all of his, lack of a better word, his mishegas. And she just protected him kind of from the outside in. Anyway, it was a really good film. It was a good one.
Yeah.
I liked it.
As my wife says, she just sucked it all up. She knew that he couldn't help it.
Yeah.
Like there was a time when he yelled at her, like when the prawn balls aren't right or something in the car, and she kind of loses it for a change, the only time in the movie. And she realizes he couldn't help it. And she just had to push through it, her own hurt. Yeah. And that's both a sign of strength and a sign of her extreme love.
The fact that she understood it and was able to let him be himself was really phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. Melanie, is that generally the advice that clinicians like you give to parents of autistic kids? Let them be who they are?
Yeah. Not to criticize them, to be extra careful and not hurt ego. Yeah, I would say.
Not to react to it's not about you. It's always about the child, and she showed that, to a fault. To the point.
And every child's so different.
Yeah.
Yeah. This year, I'm in a group with for a little bit of the day with a group of second graders, and there are 6 of them, 2 girls and 4 boys, and they all have different struggles, but they're all very kind to each other, which is very helpful to see them kind to each other, and they're all really different.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little more when we get to the scene with Luke in the bathroom after Luke cuts himself. Okay. Who else? Who's next?
Kurt wanted to go next, and Kurt, it is Maudie, Maudie, I believe, and it's a wonderful movie. Unmute yourself, Kurt.
I'll take a look for it. So I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. It was very much kind of a boilerplate BFI lottery fund movie, though. I knew 5 minutes in which beats it would hit and about when it would hit them, the supporting characters. But it did what it did very well. I did have a little bit of problem with kind of the Hollywood course of autism. It would recede when the plot demanded it more than
Yeah, I've heard that before. Let's
would
save
happen.
that for the end. Can we save that for the end, Kurt?
Sure.
Because we're going to have a lot to say about the last 10 minutes of it, I'm sure.
Well, it was not just the last 10 minutes, but even once he got to Taiwan.
I see. Progressive, it was clear he was going to have a relationship with her, to you.
Yeah,
Well, it's a movie.
it is a movie.
Who's next?
I
Donna?
think, no, I think I don't have any hands up right now.
Okay. I want to call
I had
attention.
my hand up.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Go ahead, LaDonna.
I was just gonna say, the car crash was, Mr. Jim was asking about the car crash. It was shocking and it was sad. Having lost my husband suddenly this November 22nd, the anniversary of his death 30 years ago, it was out of nowhere. When you lose someone like that, and the mother, what she had to deal with, because they were so close. And, I just wanted to comment on the car crash because we'll go to the rest of the film later. But that was just amazing how she handled everything. And he must have been a stunt man too, because, oh my God, how did he get out of that? But that was very sad.
I want to say another thing, describe another part of the film after the crash that made it very special. After we established that, I think the car drifts slowly backwards over the curb and turns over. There's Sally Hawkins, who's obviously heard the crash and is running out from her house. And there's no sound and there's no music. And the camera just runs along with her, including to the point where she opens the door. And I think that absence of sound is sort of like allowing our own feelings to grow. Mm-hmm. And really was one of the things that makes that special. I mean, dropping sound out is not a new technique by any means, but this was particularly appropriate and it works so well for this piece. I didn't remember that, but it really draws you in and you feel her horror. I mean, she's such a wonderful actor, and I'll just cite one example. There was a scene early in the movie where she's walking with a bouquet of flowers in a cemetery, and you know what she's doing, right? She's going to visit the grave. But if you study her face, she is full bore grief. She's not crying, but it's like she's communicating what a person like that would feel. Granted, perhaps in a hyper dramatized style, but it's still, for Hollywood, very understated. And I thought very beautiful. And to do that for just a little scene, I mean, who knows what, it may be all they saved from a full day of shooting. I doubt it. But this woman can really put herself in the moment with the characters. And I think we saw that in Maudie.
Jim, I wanted to say that I don't think that the silence when she ran out was just a Hollywood or a movie trick. I think for anybody who's experienced, and LaDonna just expressed it, I have myself, the suddenness of somebody finding out that somebody has died suddenly. The world just, it stops. It's a visceral, physical response that people have, sometimes like dead silence and there's nothing else, sometimes like just internal screaming. But I think that having it be silent reflects the reality of what that shock is to a person's system. And I think it was
let's talk about Martin Humphreys, the teacher next. How do we first see Martin? He's in the school, right, as it should be. And he falls in the hallway and the students laugh at him. We don't know much about his disability. Before the fall, we weren't really clear he had some disability. Mm-hmm. But for me, and then he makes light of it with them and carries on. And then the really cool thing happens that tells us about his character. Talk about exposing a character and developing his inner life. What happens? Anybody want to explicate that scene? He goes outdoors and he finds the students. Steve.
Unmute.
That was one of my favorite moments in the movie when he sees the kids. He knows what they're doing. They're smoking pot. He confiscates the joint and he tells them to go back to class. And then he lights it up and the principal shows up behind him. And as soon as he hears the principal's voice, he drops it in such a way that it's like, I wasn't anywhere near that thing. It was so perfectly and timed and done. It was just, I mean, that told me more about his character than anything else.
Right. That's why I brought the scene up. It's funny how these little things are such a tell, and the principal didn't see it either because it was on the other side of it.
That's right. He did it that way purposely and it was perfectly timed and executed.
Really, really a lovely bit. And, that's an example of the artfulness when the movie is understated. Michael Alcoff has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment that this movie being about, how should we say, broken people, and the inclusion of that Hollywood is starting to incorporate people with, at least allegedly, people with handicaps. It was nice for me to see a person in that condition because I suffer from a similar condition, being that I have to use a walker to get around. So I related to that person and saw it was nice that he took
Well, they allowed us to see him as a person beyond his handicap. I mean, sure, you accepted his quirks and his shyness and his, right off the bat, he says, communication I'm uncomfortable with. But it gave him a humanity and a decency that you became an ally of his right away. And it wasn't necessarily out of pity, it was out of interest because you knew you could feel how smart he was. A remarkable performance. But this is humanizing a character. He was a brilliant character who happened to be handicapped. Of course, in his case, you can't separate the two from his character and his reactions. But it was clearly better than Rain Man because it was a much more complex character. Although I hadn't seen Rain Man.
Yeah, we like that movie. Rain Man.
All right.
Yeah. Laurie has something.
Yeah, hold on. I think the one of the abstains, Harriet or Stan, is next. Can unmute yourself, and then Lori.
Hi, friend. This is Harriet.
Fern.
I just want to say that the tutor was the only humorous element in this entire movie. It was very, very depressing. Every character had, traumas and were downers, and he brought a little lightness to it. And I really appreciated the fact that he was in the movie.
Great. I mean, that was the intention for him. I thought the actor brought a lot of his own creativity to it. But, he had this objectivity about himself, which was quite cynical, and he chose comedy, humor, to make light of it, to make his condition tolerable for himself. And there's that scene where he with his physician or counselor, and she says, these drugs aren't antidepressants. He said, oh, that's good because I'm not depressed. And clearly he's taking drugs recreationally because of his emotional needs. And she encourages him to go to therapy, and he gives off this litany of things that are wrong with him. You mean I should share that? And she said, yeah, share your issues. It'll be good for you. And then later on he does, because he has this mini breakdown.
Jim,
But
Jim, one of the best lines in the whole thing was when he approaches Nathan and says, I'm going to be circulating and I'll be sending you some messages for the answers. I thought that was hysterical.
Yeah. For me, the great one-liner was in the very beginning of their relationship in the hallway at the school, where Nathan says, why do you walk so funny? And Martin says, well, you're blunt, aren't you? And he explains, and then he says, and why are you weird? And it's like tit for tat. I mean, he's showing him, Martin is showing Nathan that Nathan's being treated like a real person, getting real feedback with no bullshit or no over politeness. And this is one of the ways you make friends, is to see, yes, Steve, is to make sure people understand how you see them, and you see them warts and all, and without judgment. Because remember, he is bullied in the school. Steve?
Yeah, another really winning.
Hold on, Steve. Lori next, then Steve.
Oh, sorry, Lori.
Well, I was gonna, and maybe you want to talk about this a little bit later, but there was a line in the movie where the teacher who was coaching this group of students, for the athletic championship, the math championship, knows the tutor and says, "Oh, is he still using his MS as an excuse?" And then mentions Stephen Hawking. And I thought that was really, really a good way to put him in his place a little bit. So evidently this math teacher who knew him from before felt that he had given up too soon, and he was making it clear why he thought his MS wasn't a good excuse.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate for you. Or was the leader of the British expedition showing his colors there, that he wasn't empathetic enough, or was a hard taskmaster and unforgiving with Martin's condition? That was a pretty brutal thing to say right out, after not seeing him for 10, 20 years. I thought it was kind of aggressive. The rest of his performance is toned down as written. But I don't know. Martin had me won over before that, but you're right. The line about it was his character, not his disease, that got to him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, diseases do that to people.
Well, of course they do.
Look what it did to Nathan. Right. Of course, it was more tightly woven into his whole physiological and psychological and neurological perspective on things. You couldn't separate his autism from who he was, because he was all adaptation. He was just coping. This is how people cope. They're uncomfortable with communicating, so they don't, which he tells us in the beginning. I think Steve was next.
Steve, and then Natalie, I think, would like to speak.
Yeah, we can't all be Stephen Hawking. I took that with a big grain of salt. But early on, there's a very winning moment, a great line, too, when Nathan meets the teacher for the first time. And at the very end, the teacher wants to shake hands. And Nathan says, I don't like to do that. And the teacher says, yeah, well, you don't like to do it, but you fucking do it anyway.
That's right.
And he does shake hands with him.
We all have to do things we don't want to do.
Right.
And okay, but that's not saying that Nathan's spoiled, but he let him take his hand and shake it. There are lots of really little pleasures in this movie that I think were very satisfying. Little micro moments, the opposite of microaggression, micro kindnesses, I guess we could say, where people are breaking through to each other. Who's next?
That's a nice concept, Jim.
Micro kindness?
Yeah, that's very nice. Natalie?
I saw the teacher in a very different way. To me, what was so sad about him was not his problem with his legs and his and whatever his disease was.
MS. He had MS.
MS. But the reason he was given the responsibility to teach this young genius boy was, I thought he himself was a mathematical genius of sorts.
He was.
And therefore, to me, what was so sad is he did not reach and go up the plateau and reach the heights of what his brain could have taken him. And here he is teaching these uninterested, difficult boys in a high school, which he hated this. It's sort of like a musician who plays the piano and is so extraordinarily talented and goes up, and ends up playing a piano bar in a hotel. That's the way I saw him, that aside from his physical disease, he had the terrible experience of thinking he could be something really special in mathematics one day. And this is where he ended up. And I think that is what connected him so much with this boy who he took into his heart to try to push him up with the competition.
I think you're absolutely right. So he is a bit of a foil. He's like a faulty mirror image of Nathan post-collapse, and he's trying to prevent Nathan from, although he does say, are you trying to compare when they're lying down on the grass and he pops a pill and, he says, what happened to you at the Math Olympics? It's like, in a way, Martin is saying, don't become a drunk like me, and on the other hand, he's saying, you're different, and that's why I'm engaged with you. And that's all in the same message, Natalie. I totally agree. But I think that in the overall arc of the film, that Martin becomes a hero in his own light. Does anybody want to take that and run with it? Come on, Arlene and Arthur, you can do it. If you don't want to, it's okay. I can tease you. Don't make Steve Bram. It's not heavy lifting for Steve.
I know it's not heavy lifting. Martin had a big issue to deal with, and that is, does he write off the rest of his life because he thinks he's going to be worse and worse quickly. So does he get romantic with her, with Julie, number one? And number two, does he try to deal with his issues? And the huge step was when he went to the AA group or whatever the group was and talked about his issues and his problems. And that was very hard for him to do. So I think he really turned a corner at that point.
Right.
Clearly.
And he went to that group just after the scene where he's scraping the wallpaper off his apartment walls. And he was smoking grass and, alone, and probably he just had a moment where he felt he had to make a change or do something. And in a way, he winds up weeping, leaning his head against the wall, and then he's in the support group. But typical of the way he deals with things, he says, I'm an alcoholic, and he says, oh, no, I'm not. That's another group. That's tomorrow's group. It's like the guy's delightful in his self-knowledge. And he's laughing at himself too, but this is his MO. It's how he deals with things. So I felt that.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Arlene and then Brad.
Yeah. I really thought the hero of this film was Sally Hawkins. She was so terrific as an empathic mother. She was grieving, mourning. She was being repelled by her only child. He was pushing her away. She was still understanding. The scene where she went to get him his shrimp dish, which it had to be a prime number that she was getting him, and the way she fought for that and still was rejected by him at every turn. I thought she was wonderful. In her acting, of course, is just terrific. We had seen Maudie years ago, and it was one of the most wonderful films.
And the other Mike Lee films that she was in.
Yes. Yeah. And it was, to me, astounding how she could handle everything that was being thrown at her and then still feel part of her own self, her need, her loneliness to reach out to Martin. I thought it was a wonderful performance and character as written.
And of course, she learned from Martin how to phrase her communications with her son in more mathematical terms.
Yeah. Well,
and
don't go to the ending,
helped toward the
Arthur.
end.
Don't ruin the ending for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt the same way, Arlene. Just a magnificent actor. And that scene where she goes to get the takeout food, she's on the verge of bursting out into tears. You see how hard it is for her, yet she's trying to succeed at getting a prime number of shrimp balls. One more. And she does. And she breaks through this guy who, like, you know, when she shows what breaks through to him, she pulls out the chart of prime numbers and he realizes this is serious stuff. Doesn't understand it entirely, but that's it. So, you know, this is a person who's determined. It's about the outcome. It's not about how she feels going through it.
It's about a grown-up who's experiencing her own wounds, her own childhood stuff, her own stuff, and she's being asked to be a grown-up in this situation, to be the adult and put aside her own stuff. And that's super, super difficult. And it's very touching when people can do it. You know, I handle divorces. That's what I'm a divorce lawyer. And I see parents all the time who are called upon to put aside how they feel and try and deal with what their children feel. And some people can do it. Most people can't. And when they do it, it's extremely moving and significant. And that's what I think she did. She was able to put aside how it felt to her and say, my job here is to take care of my child. I'm the grown-up. And if I feel bad, I'll find another avenue, another vehicle for expressing that. But with him, I will be the grown-up for him. I will hold him up. That was very beautiful. Brad.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a word about the supporting cast because, yes, we see these individuals on the autistic spectrum, but on the other hand, we see a number of typical teenager types with typical teenager types of issues, except that they're also brilliant in math. So I think that was an important statement that the movie was making, that you don't have to be a freak to be a math genius. And I just thought the ensemble was conveyed an important message.
Like the blonde girl says, I think it's on the airplane, you're no longer a geek or a nerd, you're just ordinary among all these other people.
Yeah.
You know, and he'd never considered that because all he saw was his difference, you know. So it's a great introduction to the people he'd meet. And then he walks in and meets the other people and they're playing chess on the tiles on the floor with teacups. You know, it's like, that's another great touch that tells so much without calling much attention to it.
Barbara, unmute yourself.
I have an autistic grandson and I cried through the whole movie. And I thought the most incredible thing that the movie did was accurately depict what it's like to navigate a child who is like that on so many levels. And the mother really was able to navigate that child. And it was so accurate. It was so depicted my grandson, who is both brilliant and communicative and autistic, and the challenges that you feel. And the movie just did a brilliant job, I think, of exposing and expressing that the experience both of the child and the people who were dealing with the child. I thought it was wonderful.
Risa.
I just want to say that in the same vein, I also have a grandson who's on the spectrum, and the scene that got me was when he gave his mother that first hug. And the first time that our grandson had dealt enough and had a diagnosis and understood what was happening to him, the first hug that he gave to me and to Stanley is a moment we'll never forget. And I saw that in her face. I thought that was a beautiful moment.
Oh,
all right, I have lots more to say, but you have to excuse me for a second so I can get my notes because I ran to the computer. I'll be right back.
Joseph, I'm unmuted at the moment. This is Arthur Schweber. I typed a response to your chat message, but
thank you.
I don't know how to send it to you. Tell me.
There's a little button on the bottom of the video.
Or hit Control Enter.
That says chat. Oh, that does it too? I didn't know that.
Oh, really? All right, let me do that.
You type his, Arthur?
Yes.
Did you just, where it says everyone, you can change that to his name? Do you know how to do that?
No.
So if you go to the chat where it says, it says two, and then it says everyone.
This was a direct message from Joseph to us.
So if you look where it says two, it does it, if it has his name.
It does.
Then you can type your response and just hit the enter key and it'll send it to him.
Well, let's see. When you say enter, I'll hit the
Return.
return. I don't know. Joseph, did you get it?
No, that hasn't come in yet.
Look in the chat.
Enter.
Artie, send
Yes.
it to me, text it to me, and I'll send it to Joseph.
Can't you just go down to the arrow where it says the arrow and go down to the
Just went
person?
it's now it changed to everyone, but let me
Press
see.
it again and you'll see every individual's name there.
Yeah.
And
Right.
click on the name.
Look, there's Joseph. So it's now just Joseph's name.
And if you just hit the enter key, it'll send it to Joseph.
Okay. What is Joseph receiving?
A private
I hit it
message.
already.
Oh, okay.
On this iMac, it's a return key.
I see. Oh, well. Okay.
I don't see an enter key.
It's on your computer. The enter key is on your computer.
Okay. Let's leave the tech to our grandchildren as is appropriate.
It just said he's on a Mac and it's a return key. So hit the
Oh my
return
God.
key.
I hit the return key.
Okay.
That's all right. We're gonna go on.
Okay.
Matchmaker, match me a match.
But what I say to people of our generation is it's a great way to have contact with your grandchildren by inviting them over to help you with your computer because they love to do it. Any excuse. Or call them, or better yet, FaceTime so you can show them your keyboard and your screen. They love that.
Go ahead, Jim.
All right, let's talk about the kids. The most interesting for me was Luke, who's arrogant and mean and bitter and hurt. But then there's this surprising scene. We see him very early in the first exam. We see him poking his thumb with the point of a compass, and that's all we see until he's hounded out of the library, I believe, and runs to the computer lab. And then he starts scratching himself with the compass point on his forearm. And Nathan comes upon him in the bathroom. And there's this line, "When were you diagnosed?" Or "How did they tell you?" And it's like, wow, I've been waiting for this, for something, And it's this shared moment between two kids who, Luke doesn't know how to relate to people either. And Nathan knows he was diagnosed, knows he's different, and no one's ever really called him out as an equal before. And I found that extremely touching. And Nathan doesn't have anything to say, I believe, in that. He's flabbergasted because it's another way he opens up to other people in the world. And of course, since he knows autism, his brand of it, well, this kid made a breakthrough with him because the film doesn't say how many other people on the spectrum he's encountered. And certainly there are other quirky kids, in all the nations and all the other teams. But Luke is a special case. I kept looking for quirky behavior among the others, and I only found smart behavior. Isaac, who's the first kid who says, "Hi," "How do you do?" And Nathan doesn't know how to react. He's sort of the eloquent leader of them, and he seems pretty normal, but Luke really calls him out in the library, saying you're arrogant and special. And he's saying you're normal, so you have it so much better. You couldn't possibly understand anybody like me. And then the bathroom conversation follows with, they can't understand people like us. So suddenly, Nathan finds himself in a community of 2 instead of 16 team members who also love math. And I found that very rich. Some of you may have found it too Hollywood, or that he was a sacrificial lamb because he was the one who was really injured by it. And it's just a story thread, but I found it really touching. Did anybody else react that way to Luke? I think
Brad
and Donna after
Well,
Brad.
I think that was the saddest moment in the movie when he acknowledged that he doesn't even love math.
Yes, right. That hurt. Yeah, and this comes back. Nathan Martin is always telling him, "You really like it, don't you?" And Nathan says, "Yes." And for Luke, it's catastrophe. I've devoted my life to this, and I don't even care for it because it's all I have. I'm so isolated from the world. And Zhang Mei, the young girl he meets, is sort of the next step up the ladder, where it begins to go in the other direction. Luke sees into to Nathan. Luke sees into Nathan, but Nathan has never allowed anybody else besides his mother and his father to see into him, and Martin, begrudgingly. And it's finally happening independently of his family and those people close to him with her. And I think the story of their relationship is maybe a little too cute sometimes, but it goes, into somewhat dangerous territory. Did anybody find that unreal or unlikely? The romantic angle? I mean, she had her own issues, didn't she? Mitchell, from his throne. Yeah, lean into the computer. We'll hear you.
I think after that, Donna wanted to say something too.
Unmute.
Oh, I'm okay after that.
Okay.
I thought she was an endearing person to the film, and her smile was very magnetic. And I was just ruined when she opened the door and she was wearing a nightgown, and she came into his bedroom and said, "I can't sleep. Can I come in with you?" And it just ruined her relationship to me. And
why is that? Go deeper into that.
Well, I looked at her as being a savior to him in Taiwan, as being someone who guided him around, and suddenly she thrust herself upon him in a manner that I think was unsuspecting, and I don't think it was necessary to add to the film. It certainly sparked my enthusiasm as to why she would do this. But I was very disappointed that she walked in wearing this brief nightgown and saying, "I want to sleep with you because I can't sleep."
Well, did she mean it sexually or platonically?
Take it the way you want, Jim.
Well, I know the way you took it. I admit it is a shock.
I took it that she really wanted to be next to him as not only a buddy, but a future person to be with.
So why is that a shock?
I'm sorry?
Why is that a shock?
Well, I thought they were kind of young. I didn't know the age. I thought they were 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Like you get married.
I got news for you. It happens, but
it happens.
It happens now. It's not like when we were kids.
Well,
but here's my point about it. Clearly, she's under pressure because her uncle's the head of the team. And there's a line, she says, that we do everything for our family in China. So there's pressure on her. And she's nervous about the exam the next morning because she can't let her family down. And the only other person we've seen her have a relationship with is Nathan. I don't think she goes into his room to have sex with him. I think she needs some reassurance and comfort. Remember, they shared a bedroom in his home, and nothing happened. as far as we know. I mean, nothing happened. And yes, she does kiss him, and it's hilarious. I mean, it's both hilarious and delicate and tense when she kisses him. And then he says, "Did I do that right?" Which is a very funny line in itself. And then they kiss again. And then he's kind of pleased. But then he sort of takes his book and goes back to it on the other side of the bed. And she accepts that. She just kind of snuggles into his shoulder. And to me, that's what her motivation was. This is what she wanted to get out of the night, the day.
Joseph, I think Joseph would like to speak, and then Harriet or Stan. And Lisa.
I looked at the young lady going into his room as showing that he in his development is atypical. Most teenage boys would be really excited for that. He's not. And then we see in that time when they're together, his internal turmoil, that he has this asocial side to him coming from his different way of seeing things from being on the spectrum, to the I want to be normal side, fit in, have a relationship, have connection with someone, and not be alone. So I think the young girl coming to there is offering the opportunity for us as a viewer to see that.
Thank you.
Now I want to go back to Mitch. Did you feel once it was clear that nothing happened? Was it clear that nothing happened during the night? And did she return to your good empathetic graces after that? Or did it stay with you after that scene?
No, it didn't stay with me, Jim, but I thought that whoops, I got to get rid of this. I thought that the director overplayed that scene to do a little bit of what Joseph said, and that is to bring him from maybe pre-puberty to puberty to adulthood in one scene.
Right, well, that's quite an accomplishment. It wasn't so easy for most of us, was it?
Well, it is a Saturday night and we're out here having fun, Jim. So let the good times roll.
Get a room.
Okay, one of the Epsteins wanted to speak, and then Risa. Unmute yourself, Harriet. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Fern. I thought that the scene between the girl and Nathan was a little forced. This guy was very, very naive. He didn't understand his own body. He didn't understand relationships too well. And yet he throws it all over and chases her to the train. I thought that was a little too fast and not realistic.
We'll come back to that.
I think
I'm
Risa
glad you brought that up.
wants to speak on that as well. Go ahead, Reese.
Well, I don't want to speak on that because I know he doesn't want to hear about the end. But I would disagree with that. That was a funny scene when he said, "Did I do it right?" That was so tender to me. That was so sincere from somebody on the spectrum, because it's the same thing as the hug to his mother. That's really going far and was very hard for him. And I think he was frightened by it. I don't think he was looking for it. I think he was just trying to respond properly. He didn't want to hurt her and he didn't want to be hurt, but it was a big move for him, that little kiss.
He was sensitive to somebody else's feelings.
Completely.
For a change, yeah.
For the first time.
I suspect, though, he was also saying what a lot of young people think. You know, a lot of people, when it's new, they wonder if it's right, if they're normal, if it's okay. They just don't say it. But he was inclined to say what he thought, and so he said it. Did I do it right?
You could feel that way at 69 when you meet somebody too, you know.
Yes, that's right.
That's a very good point.
Yes, it's true. Okay, hey, Doris?
I thought the little girl was just absolutely precious. I just loved her. Her expressions, her way of treating him, her way of speaking, and her mannerism. She was delightful. She was great.
She was. Anybody else? that I miss right now? No, go ahead, Jim.
Okay, well, I'd like to move on to discuss the ending because this is, I think, the only controversial thing in the movie. And that is the ending starts with the departure of the girl. The uncle walks into the room. There's that scene with the blonde girl who said, I think I told somebody about this. Did you get into trouble? So obviously the uncle was tipped off by either the girl or someone else. And how, you know, and the doors do not have locks on them, we notice, because she walks in without knocking too. And that's the beginning of the end of the film. And there's the following scene where she's packing her bags and say, don't ask me to do something I don't want to do, which I thought was really grown up of her and proud. You know, I'm not going to be here just because for the family stuff. And she leaves. So I think that is the destabilizing, the inciting event that sort of disturbs and primes Nathan, because one, he's never felt this way about anybody before. And no one's ever left him other than his father through death. So this is a very loaded situation for him. And for him to sit down in the exam and take the exam about the trains and the colors of the trains and so on, it brings back a lot of memories because he's at a high stress level. And this one aspect of autism is that you can't control your ideas or your feelings as well. The impulse control is gone and his demons take over. And given his life, you can see why he has demons. I mean, he witnessed his father's death and he survived. So there's a bit of survivor's guilt there too. Why? Why did it happen? Well, no one will ever know that. So I think there is development to him chasing after her to respond to what some people have been saying. It didn't just come out of the dark because he has to take the test alone without her presence, despite Martin being there. He's overcome, he's alone, and he bolts. And it's not exactly clear why. It's not like he's leaving because he hates math. I think he's leaving because he's overwhelmed with his demons. And it's not that he wants to leave math. He wants to get away from his demons, and math seems to be provoking them, the stress of the exam. And he disappears, and of course, Sally Hawkins finds him in the tea shop, and they have this great scene. After the chips up the nose, you know, she gets him. I mean, the breakthrough is that he cries for his father, you know, and that's the first time he's been able to express that to his mother. And she says, well, what did you like about him? She said, oh, he made me laugh. He stuck chips up his nose. And then she says, you mean like this? And there's sort of a smile. And he says, I miss him. It hurts. And a tear rolls down his cheek, and she touches him. And they talk about these feelings, you know, and she very delicately, this is what I think Arlene Schwimmer referred to, she very delicately poses her questions to him to get around to, well, do you feel the same way about her? Or can you feel something similar to what we just discussed about her? And he says, I guess I think so. What is there about it? I can't figure out love. And before that, remember, there's a very brief scene where he looks up love on a computer, on his laptop, for a mathematical formula. And I think he says, I looked it up, but I couldn't understand the formula. And it's probably a real page on the web. We could all look it up if we wanted to.
That's funny.
But it's adorable. And, you know, he uses the only resource he has, which is the web and his mathematical mind. And he's truly stumped. And Sally Hawkins previously had said, through the doorway, he's come home because she's run away. And Sally Hawkins says, you liked her, didn't you? And he says, yeah, I did. More than ice cream, but not as much as maths. And then Sally Hawkins says, well, you know, I'm concerned about you because I like you more than ice cream. And then she takes it a step up a notch in the tea room scene. And she explains what love is. Does anybody want to parse that? I thought it was just beautiful. Brad?
Well, I don't remember the exact words that she used, but she used mathematical terms to describe those feelings. She talked about subtraction and addition, and so she found a way of communicating with him in a way that he could understand.
You're right. I'll quote it because I thought it was so lovely. She says, when someone loves you, they see something in you that they like, and that adds value to you. And when you lose
So
them, love adds value to you. It makes you more than you were before without it. And when you lose it by her running away, it makes you less. And that was just so poetically put. I don't know how long they thought about that, but it kind of plays off that I like you more than ice cream. You know, the three things he understands: ice cream, his father, and maths. You know, mom he takes for granted until that scene. And then they share the loss of the father. And then he says, why? And she says, no, you can't know that. No one ever has figured out love. And this is really the climax of the movie, not his running out from the test, but it's his breakthrough moment where he begins to feel something so genuine, he allows his emotions to take over instead of his rational mathematical mind, which is how he's controlled his environment and his world up to this point. And that's I think where, and then there may be some dissension among us about, is the ending logical? Is it Hollywood? Is it realistic? I don't care. The point is that Sally, thank you, Risa. The point is that Sally Hawkins broke through just on the perseverance of a mother's love. That's it. And, you know, she was terrible at math, so it was maybe a stretch for her to figure out how to describe love in terms of math. But she had her own loss, too. She lost her husband. And let's face it, he was a great guy. How could you not wish for a spouse like that, who loved your handicapped son so fiercely? So she knows a lot about loss and the emptiness you feel when love is taken away. The possibility of sharing love is taken away. So it totally comes out of her character in so many ways. I just thought that was beautiful. And that sort of got to me very tearfully, which is really odd when you cry before the main titles and then you cry before the end credits too. It's like full circle, bookend. Brad?
Well, you know, I thought the ending was really complex because was it his relationship with this girl and the growth that he had experienced with her that opened him up for a new relationship with his mother? Or was it the fact that his mother finally found a way through using math of communicating with him that she hadn't been able to before? So it was open to several different interpretations, and I like that.
I think you're right, and I think both are contained in its intention. I think they meant for both, because how can you can't separate the breakthrough from Sally, from his mother. I mean, it was all part of the same process.
Mona.
And then I'm gonna.
I was just going to say, as a practical matter, he left home. He went very far away. He learned a new language, which personally I found absolutely unbelievable that you could learn Chinese from a book, but it doesn't matter. He had a whole set of new experiences, including a friendship with this girl. So I don't think it was just the mother saying something to him in using mathematical expressions, although I agree with you, Jim, that was a wonderful moment in the film. I felt sorry for the mother. I thought living with this kid had to be one of the most difficult experiences day in and day out. And she had lost the one person who passionately loved the kid the way she did, when she could share the challenges of it with her husband. So I felt really sorry for her, and I thought she was unbelievably patient. Just, I mean, she was saintly in her patience with that kid.
I think that some parents who have a child or children like that do rise to it in an extraordinary way. And when there's a breakthrough, it's very profound. I had a client who had a boy who was very severely autistic, and he never spoke. He couldn't speak at all. And until he was 15 years old, when they gave him a computer, and he began to type everything that was in his head. So here was this boy who she didn't know what he thought about anything, except he would throw things, he would not participate. He started to answer by writing. And it was unlocked. Something unlocked it, some way of getting through to him. This was less dramatic, but as Brad pointed out, she found some way to unlock some of what was going on. And it's very profound to witness that.
I love Mona's comment, though, because it was new obstacles were being thrown in front of him, and he was slowly rising to each occasion. So there was lots of priming the pump for this growing awareness and his ability. So thank you for that. For off what you just said, there is a great documentary about a high-functioning autistic young man who is on the cusp of moving out of his parents' house. And he goes to a daycare center with other autistic young adults. And what brings them all together is that they're all fans of Disney movies. And they play. And why would autistic people love Disney movies? Because emotions are very simply expressed, very common emotions, and they're acted out in a way that these minds can understand and absorb. They love them. And there's a scene where he leads a discussion of a Disney movie, and you see the young people cheering for the movie. And his father was a reporter for a Jewish reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and the mother was not Jewish and not professional. But when they discovered that it was Disney movies that actually was this boy's breakthrough moment when he was very young, and that's documented in the film, they indulged it and they encouraged him to speak lines from Disney movies to express his feelings. And if you want to see that, I can't remember the title. I think An Animated Life, something like that. So it's a documentary, but really nice, very, very uplifting. He winds up speaking at a clinician's autism council, and in Geneva or someplace like that. It's very, very, it's a feel-good documentary, and the kid's very knowing, and he actually has a girlfriend that he breaks up with, and he has to overcome the heartbreak. It's very, in a way, similar to this, the loss of, it wasn't that romantic a relationship. And then if you're really interested, there's another charming film called Keep the Change, where most of the cast are autistic themselves, including the lead young man and the lead woman, who have a full-blown sexual relationship. Now, you don't see much of that, but it's charming in the way they come together and the way they deal with each other's disabilities. And it was written by a costumer or somebody, as a first-time director as well. Totally sincere. The Jewish element doesn't matter, even though they needed a Jewish daycare center for autistic kids. This is the feature drama, but the other young adults and the two leads are autistic and on the spectrum, and they're funny and charming. And it's, where else do you get to see them being real people on their own, as though nobody's looking? Granted, it's a feature. So I recommend that. In a closing moment, anybody want to finish up on this movie? Natalie?
I don't know, maybe I missed this. I might have come in a little bit late, but after I watched the film, which I really enjoyed, except for the very ending. I checked it out on my iPad, and what it said was that this was based on a real story, and that this boy did end up marrying this Chinese girl, and then they got divorced. So after
If they were normal after all.
So
they should have seen Fern.
After her. And
Okay.
after that, it made the film even more appealing to me. Did you know that, Jim? That it was
no, I didn't. I knew that the director and co-writer of the film had done a documentary on the math competition. And I didn't know that it was based on real characters. But so he'd been a documentary filmmaker before. This was his first feature. I mean, it's amusing. Thanks for sharing that. But it just goes to show, you know, like I say, Jews are people too. You know, it's like it takes all kinds. So I want to talk about this. One final comment from Steve.
Yeah, there was a really interesting visual element throughout the film regarding the use of colors. When Nathan was walking through the fish markets or wherever they were with the girl, or even the flashbacks to the traffic light, there was this like glowing flare around the colors, which is how he perceived them.
Yeah. And his fascination with patterns too.
Right.
You know, there's and there's all over. It's like the desks in the exam halls, you know, the geometric patterns they made. And
yeah,
the film's very sensitive to pattern. Didn't do, you know, it's fun to have it, but it didn't play into the narrative. But I want to talk about this film. I get a feeling that most people really liked it. And I was trying to sort of lighten up our programming with things I thought was meaningful. Is this sort of pleasing people a little more than perhaps the others? Steve, Mona? No. Nobody want to comment?
It was great. Everybody, I think, was happy to see it, but I think all of your films are terrific. So,
well, I try and find films that have meat on their bones. Yeah. Otherwise, what if it's so much fun? We don't need to talk about them. Like A Fisherman's Friend, I thought I'd get into real trouble for that.
That was a good movie.
You know, but we love Fisherman's Friend because it worked on us. You know, we had these, you know, characters that lived for us.
Michael was wondering if after some of us see the new version of West Side Story, that maybe in the beginning of January or something, maybe we could talk about the differences or something like that. I'm really looking forward to it because that was my favorite movie of all.
The whole world is. And, you know, Spielberg doesn't do anything half-heartedly. So it's very brave of him to attempt such an iconic remake. Even though he's been remaking his
Spielberg versus Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah.
Maybe. Oops, Jim, you got muted somehow.
Jim.
Hold on, everyone. Jim, you're muted.
Yeah, okay, there I am. It was Jerome Robbins' choreography. So this is, you know, for many reasons, an iconic film. And I believe the lyrics are by Sondheim, so an early collaboration for Bernstein and him. So
Mitchell, do you want to ask something?
Yes, Jim. I've noticed in like Atypical and Young Sheldon and in this film, the use of trains. Could somebody explain to me what the reasoning is behind that and the autism?
I don't know. My suspicion is it's a world they can control because it's miniature. They set it up. I mean, there's that scene with his father as young Nathan. Hey, is it going to work? Is it going to work? Yes, it works. You know, it's like we caused this to happen. It gave agency to the boy. You know, he's not just all in his head. He could put something together with his dad and it would work as promised. And that's how I read that scene. And I think anything tangible like that is affirmative. It's why art therapy works so much for people who are disturbed, and it's just, you know, and why art is great for kids. What did we see? Oh, the Children of Windermere we saw in Yom Kippur in the afternoon. There's a scene with the art therapist, and she says, you know, I've seen all kinds of art therapy, but these kids are really coming out of their shells. As terrifying as the scenes are, this is really terrific. I never thought I'd see it go this deep. So it's a great thing. Natalie? No, okay.
Mr. Rutkin, may I say something?
Yeah.
Don't. I really feel that in the film world today, the more people are becoming more aware, people with disabilities have a lot of talent. Across the whole spectrum with music or a math or depending on what your diagnosis is. But I just think the film industry
They're
should.
trying. No, they're trying. There's a disabilities council at the Academy, and all the Hollywood unions have committees that focus on this, and both increasing representation in films and in the Actors Guild. There is has been for 20 years an increasing sensitivity to this, and it helps. But also they make great movies. I mean, the stories make great movies, even if we have actors imitating them.
Thank you, because I have a disability and I play piano, and that's exciting because I get to meet Mr. Spielberg's cousin in a couple of weeks. And we'll just take one step at a time, and maybe something will happen with my piano.
Okay, good luck with that. Brad?
I just wanted to say that I think we were pointed to the fact that maybe he has Asperger's, because in one of those initial scenes, we see him playing with a dinosaur, and dinosaurs are a typical Asperger fetish for young boys with Asperger's.
Yeah, one of the scenes in An Animated Life with the documentary about autistic young adults, they're playing Land Before Time, which is an animated movie about a young dinosaur. So I think you're absolutely right. But remember, it was the diagnostic pediatrician who suggested that, and the boy was cold to it because they're not meat eaters. You know, it's like total. You're no good because you didn't know that. You know, and I did. That's another example of the specificity of their world. Okay, so I'll try and find more films like this since people seem to enjoy it. I don't know what the next.
So much,
Jim.
Well,
when are we meeting again?
I think. Let me dig out my calendar. I requested 2 dates in November. We're doing these a week apart because next weekend is Thanksgiving weekend, and some people may travel. So the next one will be, I've asked for December 4th, Saturday, and December 18th. And I haven't selected those films yet. I think we're going to come back with a deeper film, a more adult film, although this was plenty deep and certainly emotional. So we try and, do all things here. And thank you all for attending. And there was a spirited discussion. I think films like this really bring out the emotions in us.
You're welcome, Mr. Ruxin. How can I say hello to Janice and send her encouragement?
I know they'll lose a lot of money.
I'll forward it for her. I'll let you. Yeah.
Thank you for
she's a fighter.
Great day, great evening, Jim. Thank you.
It's been inspiring to me.
you all.
All right, thank you all.
And
and
thank
we'll see you in two weeks.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
everybody.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Good night.
Good night.
Meeting you all.
Good night.